Hi, I'm former ABC foreign correspondent journalist Mark Corcoran. Tonight's Australian story is about an epic high seas rescue by the Australian Navy 40 years ago. 99 men, women and children were quite literally preparing to die when they were spotted adrift in the South China Sea. I first covered their story about a decade ago and have stayed in touch with some of the remarkable people who were there on that desperate night. Now, these former Vietnamese refugees and their Australian rescuers are being reunited to reflect on what it means to be given a second chance in life.
99 got on that boat near the mouth of the Saigon River. Most people were below decks, literally crammed together like sardines. They wouldn't have known what was coming. Total despair.
The storms come on the second day. This was unbelievable. The boat was like a small leaf under boiling water. The water get into the diesel compartment and then blew up the engine. No engine in the stormy sea is the most dangerous.
That's when the worry starts to creep in. You're at the mercy of nature, really. You had no control of the boat.
And I remember that as well. It's just really huge and it just up and down, up and down.
People were scared and I thought I was gonna die.
I think I never can see my mom again and my brother and sister again.
The 5 days, we was at sea. And every single day, everyone don't know what to do, they just pray. It's the first time I seen these photos after 40 years, and most of them gave me a goosebump when I saw them. 99 people has been hauled up to the deck. It's a big effort. When they're so sick, so weak, yes, me here, very skinny after days at sea. It's very emotional photo for me. I can say that my life has been blessed from the moment I've been rescued. Thank you, Australia. I was born and grew up in Saigon. My parents have 9 children. I am number 4 in the family.
On the 30th of April 1975, the North Vietnamese army entered Saigon and the 30-year war was over.
There were incredible scenes as thousands of Vietnamese crowded, pushed and squeezed to get on the American helicopters making their way out of the city, the last escape route from Saigon.
As the Vietnam War ended, their whole lives changed. A lot of people hoped that it would be a time of peace after 40 years of war, but just the opposite happened. Right away, anyone associated with a former regime, military or civilian, or even just normal people who seemed like a threat, were sent away to re-education camps.
Myself, as a son of a Republic soldier, so they still treat us as their enemy. And my dad and 6 sons have to escape and to stay in the jungle for 2 years.
Well, in Saigon, there were extreme food shortages. There was no work to do, and it was just total deprivation. There was like no future.
No freedom of speech, no freedom of gathering, no freedom of practicing religion, all gone under the new rule of the communist mechanism.
People took to boats to flee. The ocean was really the only way to go, through the South China Sea.
But for most Vietnamese refugees, their voyages were nightmares. Many boats sank. Many were attacked by pirates.
I've heard figures up to 1 million people fled, and the 300,000 or so perished in the escape.
I was 21, and in 1981, my father approached me and said, "Tonight, you have to go. Take along your younger brother and look after him." You know, when you got that news from your father. It's very, very sad, very nervous. Because once you go, you believe that you have no chance to see the country again. The parent, brother and sister, and friends.
I was 14 and a half when I left Vietnam. Because we lost everything, my parents could only afford to send me on my own.
I was 15. My dad said, he will go after me. So he stayed back there. So I was so frightened and sad.
I was 13 when my mum called me in and said, you go first with your brother and I will come later. And then she started crying and then I just cried with her, but I don't know where we're going.
In the previous trip, my brothers, 4 of them, ended up in jail. I was the first one to escape successfully.
The Royal Australian Navy's troop transport HMAS Sydney heading for Vung Tau, Vietnam. On board are Australian troops and equipment bound for the war zone.
My involvement in the Vietnam War began in 1965 to 1967. My conscience was very much troubled by our participation in that war. It really achieved very little, but caused massive misery, especially to the Vietnamese, and I felt very sorry for them. Wherever I managed to go, the ships that I was serving in at the time, I would make a point of visiting refugee camps, distributing clothing, distributing books, make that little bit of a difference if someone cares. And of course the Ho family, we had to actually allocate 2 houses to them because there were 13 of them. Just after I'd come back from my second tour of duty in Vietnam, I got myself involved with what was known then as the Indochina Refugee Association in Canberra. To me, it didn't make sense taking people out of a camp in Southeast Asia, putting them into another camp in Sydney or Melbourne. In 1981, I was posted to HMAS Melbourne. The HMAS Melbourne was Australia's only aircraft carrier at the time. It was the flagship of the Royal Australian Navy. I was a commander, and we were on passage to Singapore. We were 200 miles plus off the Vietnamese coast. At that stage, you could not sail around Southeast Asian waters without stumbling over refugee boats. They were basically running out of boats in Vietnam. You know, there were so many boats just going one way and leaving.
The dimension of this boat is a little bit bigger than our boat. This one is about 4 meters width, and we have only 2.7.
Captain Tom was from a fishing village, and he built the boat himself to go fishing, ostensibly. But he built it in his mind with the express purpose of escaping with his wife and 7 children.
Là sống cái chế độ cộng sản đó, thì chú không muốn cho con chú sau này để lệ thuộc của cộng sản, thành ra chú muốn đóng chiếc tàu để chú đi. Hơn nữa là gia đình chú, cha chú và mẹ của Thiếm là bị tụi nó giết chết hết, thành ra chú không muốn ở nữa.
It was only designed for 30 people and 99 showed up. They were like doomed from the start.
Look at this. The first time after we slipped through the checkpoint, I was sitting right in that corner underneath.
They purposefully chose the night of the full moon because there were less patrols on full moon. They didn't think people would be escaping.
The first night was just about, staying quiet and trying to sneak out as fast as you could. The boat was going at full rev. About 6 hours later, the engine conked out. Luckily, we made it out of Vietnam water. By then, we were just drifting in the sea. And that night, the boat got sucked into this gigantic vortex. The boat was caught in a big spin. It would just go round and round.
Dad was holding the steering and then suddenly lost control and the boat spin. And then he just let go.
The force of the water, it was just so strong. You could hear it, the sound was deafening. And I seriously thought that was going to be the end of us.
That's when Dad was really worried. You know, he can see death is coming.
I sit next to my older cousin, so if I die, I got my cousin sit next to me.
I saw 2 merchant ships pass by. We shot up the flare to let them know we're there. We scream, we call, but no response.
Everyone was just so scared, people crying, people praying. The next day was calmer. We saw a plane flying toward us. Again, we set off flares, we made some fire, some smoke to get some attention.
We saw the plane. It didn't fly away. It made a circle. So we know it spotted us. I just saw the word Navy. I said, oh, it's America.
Oh, everyone was just ecstatic. I just looked toward the sky and just thank God that someone looked after me.
The captain reported that a tracker had detected a fishing boat on fire about 9 miles distant. I was summoned to the bridge, and the commanding officer said to me, I want you to take charge of the onboard reception. The Navy creed is, for those in peril on the sea, do whatever you can, irrespective of nationality, race, colour, creed, whatever.
Just half an hour later, there's a whole fleet of big ships coming to us. Everyone screaming and happy and believed that we will be rescued by America people.
I can't remember whether I actually just grabbed my camera and did the job. I may have been duty photographer that night. Whatever happened, I'm just glad I did it. I'm so glad I did it. By the time the recovery started, it was darkness, and I just remember it was big seas.
When we went alongside, we were the first boat there. The boat was just full of women and kids. They'd obviously had a pretty harrowing time, and they just wanted to give us their kids. They just want their kids to be saved.
And how on earth are you going to get 99 emaciated, seasick people from the seaboat up 3 to 5 metres onto the lowest point of the decking on the Melbourne?
At first, they tried to let us climb up the ladder by ourselves, but it was hard for most of us because everyone's so sick.
And I heard the broadcast come over saying about they wanted volunteers to go up to starboard ladder bay and assist with embarking refugees. There was guys starting to carry kids, there was sailors climbing down the net. There was one sailor, all you could see was his back of his legs. He was leaning over the side of the ship trying to get down as far as this net to grab these people because we were very, very concerned that someone was going to fall. It was pretty full on, it was pretty intense.
We knew there were sharks there, we just couldn't see them. There was a lot of wash between the boats, and we were extremely concerned that people would be crushed against the ship's side.
That's me on the bottom there with my arms out, because there's a guy from Melbourne in a harness holding a baby, and you think if he drops, you know, someone's got to catch the baby. It's just, that's how it was. It's just scary, and it's just the look in their faces. It's just stuck with me forever.
I'd only been in the Navy 2 years. I was only 18 years old. It was a bit of an eye-opener. I remember thinking even back then, who would take a child out in this? And then, you know, when you get a little bit older and mature and you realise that they were trying to get them a better life. Yeah.
I was at the top of the ladder, making a very quick assessment as they were being lifted on board.
That is a top photograph of John Ingram. He was everywhere that night. He was a copper, you know, like directing traffic.
Some of the first kids who came up were quite sprightly and very happy to see us. And then as the night progressed, as we went on bringing these people on, a lot of the adults especially were just exhausted, absolutely exhausted, and to the point where they could barely get up to the ship.
That photograph, when I took that, the thing I remember is diesel fuel. She stunk of diesel fuel. And it just suddenly hit me that these people had been sitting in diesel fuel in their boat for all those days.
And I remember when I was carrying that laddie, because when I held her, She was very limp, and I was sort of best described as being probably like a semi-conscious state. They'd been through a lot. They'd been through a lot.
I was able to climb up the ladder onto the deck. And as I got on the deck, my legs just buckled under me. I was swaying from side to side, just like a drunk man.
I couldn't climb the ladder. Someone had to pick me up because I was really, really sick.
I think that someone helped me to climb up behind me. But I remember that I feel happy. Someone helped us and we are alive.
This was a formidable experience, and I'm absolutely full of admiration to this day. There's not a day in the last 40 years that I haven't thought about how everyone was got off safely and got on board safely without any injuries or deaths whatsoever.
The first shower was so great. We sing, we're happy, we clean off everything after 4 days of trauma.
The very first day, they gave us a singlet and a pair of shorts. And the pair of shorts was this big, so nothing kid size, but you may do.
We made up as many bunks as we could, the camp stretchers for them all.
I remember the big apple and the orange juice. First time I seen an apple. First time I saw the ship.
The ship had some toys in storage, and John Ingram bought them out to keep the kids happy. Other sailors who had already bought stuff for their own kids, they gave these Vietnamese children their own children's toys, you know.
Stephen was part of a small group of men who came to me on the second morning and said, look, we'd like to help around the ship. What can we do?
And here they are, they're painting, they're chipping paint, you know, doing the jobs I used to hate doing, you know, and cleaning tables, you know.
I felt that was very good for their morale. It was also important from the ship's company point of view because they didn't want to be seen as passengers.
The next few days, we just pretty much went about business as usual on the ship. We knew we were taking them to Singapore.
Under international law, Australia was now obligated to accept these Vietnamese as refugees.
On the first night, only 22 wanted to claim Australia as their new homeland. By the time we got to Singapore, that had increased to 77.
I didn't need much convincing to say, yep, I'll be the first one to come to Australia. I want to make a good life for myself, and in that I would repay to Australia, you know, to the community. I felt a very strong sense of that.
The refugees picked up by HMAS Melbourne, 200 miles off the coast of Vietnam, said they had fled from Ho Chi Minh City to freedom. Melbourne's commanding officer, Commodore Mike Hudson, said it was an old tradition of the sea that ships rendered assistance to people in distress, whoever they might be.
I doubt that they would have lasted very much longer, 2 or 3 days at the most, if they hadn't been given food and water.
There were actually tears in sailors' eyes because in that very short time, that tense period, those few days on board, friendships had evolved.
So once in Singapore, they were offloaded onto buses and taken to a refugee camp. They were designated by the HMAS Melbourne officially as MG 99, Melbourne Group 99, and that's how they know themselves.
We got the promise from them that they will come to visit the camp, and they did.
This tiny camp on the northern end of Singapore Island was designed to accommodate just 1,000 people. At present, there are more than 3,000 refugees here.
On my first visit there, I noticed that refugees were making soup out of grass that they were cutting. So the arrangement that I came to was that the provisions from the Melbourne would be distributed equally amongst all refugees there. And we sent 4 Land Rover loads of dry provisions to the Hawkins Road UNHCR camp.
And they give us tin food like spam or something that they bring in.
And test medicine, because that we never eat anything like that before. And it tastes good.
Yes.
There wasn't enough accommodation, so we were given a blanket each. And basically at night, you just find yourself a patch of grass to lie on.
By 1981, the Australian government's policy was to interview and process refugees out of refugee camps in Southeast Asia. Per capita, Australia was a leader in the number of Vietnamese refugees being accepted in the world. And they were on a Qantas flight into Sydney before the Melbourne got back to Garden Island. John Ingram visited them at the East Hills Hostel. I'd call him like a grand uncle in a Vietnamese sort of way. He even had his own family adopt a couple of the girls.
After staying in the hostel for 6 months, I moved out to find a job and work in a factory. I worked in the factory for a year and a half, and then I have news from my parents that 3 siblings, they're on the way. And then another sister, she also escaped, but we don't know where she is now. She's among 400,000 people perish at sea on their journey for freedom.
To other news now. The federal government has dramatically tightened the rules on boat people.
We'll decide who comes here and the circumstances under which they come.
In 2006, I was somewhat annoyed that Australia's attitude towards refugees had changed a lot.
And in a new uncompromising policy, all unauthorised boat arrivals will be processed offshore.
And I thought, well, we had something to be very proud of. So I wrote an article for a Navy publication, not knowing where it would go and what would happen to it.
Someone gave me the article written by John Ingram. Who's John Ingram? I didn't remember him. Why 25 years after the event, there's some guy, the Aussie guy, write a story about us. So that's why I have to find him. And very lucky I got his number. I rang him. The first conversation was amazing.
I was very surprised, very pleasantly surprised to hear from him.
Hello, John.
When he contacted me all those years later,
Welcome to Oatley. How are you?
he was so proud to tell me about all the things that he was doing.
So this was the first house I stayed after I moving from the East Hills Hostel. And I stay here with some members of MG99 with share rooms. 6 people in this house.
Okay.
Yeah. I still have good memory of this time.
I look up to John as a father because the way he treats me, like the way the father treats the son. He takes care of me, he looks after me, and we share so many stories of our life.
So John, I want to take you to my bakery, where I run for 30 years. Here's the bakery. This new owner is very famous in mid-pine sushi roll, you know.
Oh, right, okay.
Mid-pine sushi roll.
Okay. All the healthy things.
All that.
Last December, I contacted Stephen and I said, look, do you realise that it'll be 40 years next June?
And then a few days later, John rang me, Stephen, I think we should have a reunion. What do you think?
This one is very juicy.
A few years ago, John told me he's in well, and I'm very worried because it's the carb sickness make you worry.
I had radical surgery in 2009, but the cancer has spread elsewhere in my body.
So that's why this event very important to us.
It'll probably be the last time that we will ever all get together.
Okay, everyone. So we have only 4 weeks to go.
The countdown starts now, okay?
We meet at Captain Tom's house every couple of weeks, but as we get closer to the reunion, it's every week.
I got the list of the 51 MG99 members while living in Sydney.
I took it on myself to do what I call rounding up the Aussies. I said, Stephen, you get the refugees together, I'll get the Aussies together. So among the HMAS Melbourne sailors, we'll probably have about 20 sailors who've never been found or recognized. So that's a real treat. And I've been
Both
really
of us, we want to say thank you to all the people on the ship that night that rescued us.
I think the sailors are all certainly looking forward to it. I I mean, some are coming from as far as WA.
Yes, I want to meet my sailor.
Today is the big day, the 40th anniversary of MQ-99.
The location is extremely appropriate. I discovered that Tracker 851 had been salvaged at the museum, Aviation Museum at Albion Park.
And that was the tracker spotted us from the sky, and then the process of the rescue come after.
We're just so grateful, in fact, that people can go and actually touch an aircraft and say, this one saved my life.
Daddy was only 13 months old. Yeah.
It's just so exciting. We've heard from, I would say, a good 100 sailors, and a good 20 or so are going to be at the reunion.
That's me that's there. See that?
Okay.
So they're just taking up one of the babies.
I was the last to get off the our boat.
Hello, John. My name's Tor. Oh, yeah, I remember you. I have waited 40 years. Finally able to see you and have a conversation to say thank you. You know, back then I couldn't speak a word of English, so could not express what I... Yeah, that's right. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
Very nice to see you and miss you again.
It was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
I wondered, sort of not wondered so much where they actually went, but what sort of lives they had.
That's me there.
Pretty similar.
Most people like to think that when you pass it, you leave a footprint. And I think that because of that event, that night, that when my day comes, I'll leave a footprint. Something that's going to be there forever. It's made me a better person.
How old were you when you were on the ship?
8 months.
Almost 2 years old. I was 14 then.
But I've just always wondered, did they make a good life? It's been there for 40 years. I remember, wondering what's happened to them.
Now, what have you been doing with yourself in Australia since then? What do you do for a crust?
Cover.
I work as an optometrist. I'm in IT support for IT company.
I have my own consulting company. Yeah.
You don't know their faces, you don't know their story, but you knew that you were part of it, so it's full circle.
I'm not like them. I work very hard. I earn the bakery and I had to work 7 days a week.
It is wonderful to see what these people have achieved in their lives. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing.
So to the Australian Navy in general, and to the officers, seamen and air crews of the HMS Melbourne and HMS Torrens in particular, without you on that day, without your compassion, without your professionalism, and without your bravery, we all would have died. Gentlemen, we owe you our lives.
I'm very proud of the fact that Stephen, with a little bit of help from me, we've been able to sort of keep the flame of MG99 alive. This, to me, represented the pinnacle of my naval career.
Thank you very much.
When you sharing with someone a moment of death and life, it seems like that they are you and you are them. So we live in that spirit.
The refugee cause is something that isn't going to go away. If I were at sea today and I came across a boat of refugees whom I considered to be genuinely fleeing from persecution, then I would do all in my power to save them and help them resettle. Tomorrow, any of us, all of us could be refugees, fleeing persecution.
For the lucky one, the ending is happy. And for the big number of the others, the ending is horrible. But we are the lucky ones. We ended in this very lucky country.